Hello friends, this is Chandrakant from Akulmac Technologies and welcome to Top Brass. Today we have a very special guest on the spotlight. Her name is Melissa Sassy and she is representing IBM. She joins us from SFO. Welcome to Top Brass, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
It is a great pleasure as well as honor to have a person like you, and your designation is called Chief Penguin. I think it's a big mystery. I think you need to unravel this mystery for us.
Yeah, everyone always asks me, where the heck did this come from, and how did you get IBM to agree to allow you to use this job title? I'm actually an ex-Microsoftie, and I suppose once a Microsoftie, always a Microsoftie. Sorry, Arvind, we can arm wrestle about that later. When I was working at Microsoft, I worked with two individuals. One of them called herself the Chief Ninja Cat, and the other one has this Twitter handle that's called Thready the T-Rex. And I was working in a team that was called initially the Affordable Access Initiative, or Microsoft Airband, which was all about impact investment and driving connectivity, both internet connectivity and access to energy, and then bringing digital skills to people without. And I saw these two people with these fun animal job titles, but I didn't feel, based on my team, that I could give myself this funky job title, because I worked with a bunch of attorneys and they were more kind of straight-laced in nature and probably not so open to me creating this animal job title. But I really wanted one, and I know that sounds a bit hokey and silly. I left Microsoft at the end of 2018 to join IBM, and one of my focus areas, we'll talk a little bit more later about all of the different things that I do and the different hats that I wear, both within IBM and beyond. But I left to create a new startup program. And as I was working on recruiting for new startups, I took a trip to Pakistan. And I was in Pakistan with a woman by the name of Jian Atta. And Jian Atta runs an incubator and accelerator in Karachi. And Jihan goes, and it's called the Nest IO. And she gave herself a title, like this is her formal title, the big bird of the nest, right? And so I got there and I thought, man, somebody else has this animal job title and I got nothing. And so I started thinking about, what my animal job title can be. And I started thinking about a lot of the work that IBM does with, one of the companies that we bought, recently or not too long ago, Red Hat. And for those of us who work in technology, we know that, Red Hat is all about open source. And one of the things that the Linux Foundation, or the open source community uses as a mascot, if you will, and I know IBM does some of this as well, with our Linux One machines, is use a penguin. And so I thought, oh, that's my animal. And so I started thinking about how I could combine my animal with the job title. And so I came up with Chief Penguin, and I started using it, and I started putting penguins on my presentations, the ones that are internal presentations as well as external. And it kind of caught on, and I think what really kind of culminated in it being so was I was participating in a hackathon that I created with UNESCO and SAP. And UN News picked up what we were working on. And this is a publication that is viewed online by diplomats, by ministers, and a variety of people, that work within UN and or development circles. And they wrote about, and it was on the homepage of UN News, and they wrote about Code the Curve, the hackathon that I created with, again, IBM, UNESCO, and SAP. And they called me in the letter IBM Z's Chief Penguin. And so I realized that, hey, if the UN is calling me the chief penguin, then I'm totally the chief penguin. So when we kicked off the application process for my startup accelerator, our GM, Ross Morai, and he has one person in between him and our CEO, so a very senior individual within the grand scheme of the IBM world, as well as within the broader tech community. He introduced me as his chief penguin. So I thought, you know what? If the UN and Ross say I'm the chief penguin, then there we go. So I changed it in our company directory. So if any IBMer looks in our company directory, they find my job title, Chief Penguin. So there it is.
A very interesting story. So, ladies and gentlemen, Melissa Sassy, Chief Penguin of IBM Hyper Protect Accelerator. And she works with a lot of, she works on very detailed program, lot of very high level initiative. So Melissa, you work with various digital business transformational initiatives across the world, and you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. What is your one or two top expectations from the budding entrepreneurs or the SME owners?
Yeah, I think if I put on my IBM hat, and I'll put on another hat in a second, because I think there are a couple things I could talk about. So my Chief Penguin hat is on, my IBM hat is on right now. And one of the things that I think is really important is to really think about, how are you going to, build and scale your business through business mentorship and putting together the right advisory board. So when I think about the work that I do at IBM, we provide business mentorship to 15 startups, because again, I just came to IBM and launched this brand new program last year, 15 startups from 8 countries in the program, and I'm adding another 30 on September 5th at IBM Z Day, which anyone that's interested in taking part, there are wonderful skill building opportunities and opportunities to learn, but I will be announcing my cohorts for this year, which will be 30 new startups. So by the end of this year, I'll have 45 startups under my team's management. But I think that first piece is business enablement. How can I enable them to transform industries? I think that's one piece of it. Second piece of it is how can they use technology to transform their business? And because I focus on fintech, health tech, and insurtech, these are highly regulated industries. These are industries where companies are either collecting, transmitting, and/or storing high levels of personally identifiable information. So that's medical records at the individual level, bank records or financial records at the individual level, insurance records, again, at the individual level. So the kinds of things, Chandra, that you would want as a person to be protected to the highest level. So in the US, that would be a social security number, or, again, your bank records. And I am very adamant that we need to be managing data protection, privacy, and security through technology, not through policy. And so through that, I focus on providing a number of different products and technical enablement through my team that helps startups gain access to enterprise-grade tools. If I look at many of the cloud solutions on the market, your cloud vendor has the ability to has your keys. That if there's a nefarious character from the outside that interacts with this individual, let's say, and that individual accidentally does something that enables others to gain access to your information, not good, right? We see all the time about large companies, even those that we believe are the most secure, getting hacked. And so for me, with data being the new gold, what is it that IBM can do? What is it that I can do, to make sure that data is protected and safe? So I think that companies need to be doing more. And again, it shouldn't just be about a written policy to say, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. There should be technology that prohibits people from gaining access to such sensitive data.
So I think it's very clear what is your expectations from the entrepreneurs, and you spelled out very clearly without mentioning the words that these are the A, B, C that is required, and your expectation.
One more though, I got one more for you. So that's when I wear my IBM hat. And, I wear a lot of hats. One of the things that is very important to me as as an individual, whether that's personally or professionally, that's being both an entrepreneur, so someone who's innovating inside of somebody else's company. So IBM, for example, which I guess is kind of my company as well because I work there, so I feel like it's mine. And an entrepreneur. So that would be, me as a CEO and founder. I have two endeavors. One of them is a nonprofit called Mentor Nations, where we taught tens of thousands of young people to code. I also have an ed tech platform that I'm building that's called the XTP Hustle. It's all about empowering young people with digital skills, entrepreneurship, and professional development skills. It's not out yet. We're building it now. But when you ask me about what do entrepreneurs need, I'm going to put on my Mentor Nations hat for a second. And one of the things that I do when I wear that hat is focus on youth entrepreneurship. And, I think that diversity and inclusion in the VC community, in the broader tech community, in the startup, ecosystem, diversity and inclusion is often lacking. So if you look last year, 2% in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the U.S. number, of venture capital funds went to female founders. If you think about 50% of the world is women, what are we doing to empower female founders to gain access to capital, to be entrepreneurs, and to be able to prosper? I'm a big fan of design thinking. I'm a big fan of user-centered design. And so you need females in leadership positions in the C-suite to be able to really talk to your customer. It's not just about women. It's also about the Black community, the Latinx community. It's also about youth. And so I'm a big proponent of youth entrepreneurship. Those numbers are dismal when it comes to gaining access to capital. Through my nonprofit, I have a co-working space in Tunisia. We have a robotics lab, we have an IoT lab, and we focus on how to empower youth with identifying problems, solving problems through technology, creating business plans, creating business models, launching their apps or their solutions, into the market, whether that's in the Google Play Store or, whatever. But not just building technology for the sake of technology, but using technology to solve problems and empowering people to make meaningful use of the internet so that they're creating outcomes, whether that's educational outcomes, healthcare outcomes, economic outcomes, gaining access to e-government services, whatever. So those are, and not that that's not important to IBM, because it's important to IBM, but I have a little bit of a different target market when I'm wearing my IBM hat. But I will say, last year, I had really dismal percentages when I looked at the applications to my startup program. I changed the way I worked. I asked a lot of questions. I evaluated how I said things, how I operated, what my budget was when it came to diversity and inclusion. And I'm excited to say that of our applicant pool this year, we went from last year being 1% to 3% diverse to 50% diverse this year. So a massive increase. I'm super excited about it. So diversity and inclusion is something that's important to me, regardless of what hat I'm wearing.
Very nice to hear this because I think the women empowerment is a big issue globally. I think what you're doing is really remarkable.
Thank you.
And I will come to what we are doing in the end. I will just give you an update. But for now,
Awesome.
We have been hearing about from especially, I think you need to wear your IBM hat now because the next question is related to IBM.
All right, I got it. It's on.
So this is something that we have been hearing about Tech for Good initiatives or tech inclusion initiatives. So I think our viewers would like to know more about this.
Yeah, I think that nowadays, if you ask young people, or it's not just about young people. Think about yourself. What are your passions, and what are things that enable you to help make the world a better place? And I'm not saying that everybody has this altruistic idea of, all right, I want this job where I'm going to go out and create social good and make the world a better place. But I cannot tell you how many people come to me, and these are very senior people as well as interns and first year student or first year employees, interns, graduates all over the place who tell me they want to incorporate social good into their jobs. And I think it's also this big differentiator that companies have where they have, in my mind, a bit of a moral obligation to stand up and step in and solve the world's wickedest problems. We know that we have, 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, so you can find that at globalgoals.org to learn more about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and they're all about solving the world's wickedest problems. If you look at those wicked problems, climate change, gender inclusion, quality education, economic opportunities, or reducing inequalities, if you will. All of these really are about identifying problems, creating solutions, and in many cases, technology will help to further those, those goals and help to solve those goals. So I think it is partly one thing where all of us are looking for some way of incorporating our passions into our jobs, especially, a lot of the people who I work with in tech, and thinking about how can they use technology to solve wicked problems. I would say at IBM, for example, we have a large initiative that's called Call for Code, and Call for Code is all about solving the world's wicked challenges and using technology and data science to do that. Actually, I'm a judge for it, which I'm really excited about. I actually today will be reviewing applications and submissions where people submit their idea, their solution, their team, their business model, and their code in GitHub. And our team of experts review those, and the winner gets $200,000 and the opportunity to bring those ideas to life by working with IBM and its partners. We've had some really amazing winners throughout the years. It's a 5 or 6 year program. We invested about $26 million into this program. So this is one example of what IBM is doing. It's happening across tech. It's happening in, companies like BlackRock that are, the largest asset manager in the world, that's saying, you need to focus on diversity and inclusion. You need to focus on social good. You need to focus on climate change, because business plays a big role in tech for good, helping to make the world a better place. And I think that it also serves as a really interesting opportunity for employee engagement. The more excited an employee is to wake up in the morning and come to work and solve problems, the more engaged that employee is. So I know in my job, I have 20% of my time, give or take, depends on the week, that I carve out for social good and tech for good initiatives. It could be, attending a talk like this and talking about, initiatives and how people can get involved. It could be me going out and, training young women in rural Pakistan, or, rural Bangladesh or rural Kenya about technology, about learning how to code, about careers in data science, and things that can help to further their prosperity, in the world. It could also be looking at the solutions that my startup program is creating to innovate in healthcare, providing people with more access to healthcare, more access to quality information, or enabling them to make solid decisions in their life choices. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, the name itself, Tech for Good, is really, really very powerful. And I think you work globally with many countries, with a lot of people, a lot of established players and also new players. I think you would agree when I say that the personality and attitude are two key ingredients for anyone to win your $200,000 prize. Because, right? So if you don't have an attitude to win, no matter what, you may be a very smart person, you can write a good code, but if you don't have an attitude, the right attitude, you may not get $200,000 prize.
I think that's a really good point, because I think just, the attitude of saying, I want to go after this, I want to try. And, last year we had about 180,000 developers, give or take, participate in the challenge. And to submit an idea that goes up against 180,000 developers, it takes a lot of oomph in you to say, you know what, I think I can do it and I'm going to go after this. But I think the other piece of it too is not being frustrated if you don't win, the grand prize, but feeling like even if I don't win that grand prize, I'm still creating a solution. I was on a talk yesterday with a bunch of students and it was the same topic, tech for good, and one of the things that we were talking about was, I'm afraid that I'm not a developer. How can I participate in a hackathon? And what if I don't win? And I said, it doesn't matter whether you win or not. The idea is to create a solution and to build your skills. It's not about winning or taking home a t-shirt or having free pizza. It is about identifying a problem, working as a team, learning new skills, and creating something new that didn't exist before, innovating. I'm a big fan of also stretching yourself. I'm not a developer, funny enough, but I have hundreds of developers working in my nonprofit, and I've empowered tens of thousands of young people with computer science and data science. I'm not a data scientist either, but I know enough to, know when I need to pull someone else in to roll up their sleeves and run a coding camp. And for a while, I felt like an imposter. Working in technology because I'm not an architect. I'm not an engineer. I've written one line of code in my life, and that's hello world. For those of us who are technologists, you're probably snickering. And I wrote that at a developer conference, actually at Microsoft Build, because I convinced the senior vice president or the corporate vice president responsible for this developer conference to send me. And I promised that I would write my first line of code, and I did. Now, that's the only line of code I've ever written, full disclosure. I can do a mean hour of code through code.org, but you have to have this attitude of realizing that you're not an imposter, you belong, and that you have to understand, kind of who your squad is. There's no I in team. How do you bring the right team together so that when you think about this concept of, attitude, you think about this concept of infectious love for yourself and, positivity, that you also recognize where your strengths and weaknesses are, and when you need to bring in someone else who might know more about that topic than you do, but also owning when you do know something and owning when you don't. I'm a big fan of crafting your personal brand and figuring out what do you want to be known for, and how do you make sure that when you're not in the room, people are talking about you in a way that you want to be talked about. Whether that's Call for Code or any other initiative, you have to put some of your feelings that lie deep inside of you aside and realize that you're good at some things, you're not at others. You need to take some amount of calculated risk. I find that I'm a big risk taker. I take calculated risks though, and I'm an innovator and I come up with new and creative ideas. But what I'm not good at sometimes is landing things and making sure they get implemented. I can come up with big, wild, crazy ideas. And so what I do is I often will say, hey, in my IBM world, I will say to my colleague Sudarshana, can you help to manage me? You're a project manager, you have your PMP, you're good at completing tasks and making sure that people stay on task. Can we have a weekly call? Let's review my spreadsheet. Like I don't need to, for her to complete my spreadsheet for me, but for whatever it is that exists within my personality, it helps me to have her be on a call with me to say, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And I think that's the importance of, again, recognizing what are you good at? What are you not good at? How do you identify people who are, good at what you're not good at? Having little experiments to see what works for you and your personality, and taking those big risks to, prosper in your personal or professional life.
This is very good. In fact, I just want to share that as an organization, we have started a award for people who can come out. See, basically, what you mentioned is about the attitude and personality. And India being a very large country with more than 1.3 billion people, there are a lot of smart people
and some amazing biryani at that.
Yeah, of
But
course.
I don't know. I don't know. I think when I talk to my colleagues from India, I'm like, I don't know, man. I've been to Karachi and Lahore, and the Pakistani Karachi is pretty good. I might be creating a war in between India and Pakistan right now.
Right now, right now, tensions are very high. So,
I'm just kidding. I wanted to put you on your toes.
of course. So we have started a program for youngsters who can come out and speak. So it's basically a speaking competition, and your
So is it
attitude.
about public speaking then? So learning public speaking or just being able to speak up?
It's public speaking because they have to make the video. So it's not only public speaking; it's about your technical knowledge. Can you handle the some interruptions smartly? Can you interview somebody? How is your tech knowledge? Can you make your background lights,
Oh,
camera?
that's super.
So it's a combination of everything. And so this is, but I will update you about this program after the.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear more. I think that if I look at many of the skill building activities that IBM is doing, specifically in India, and obviously IBM is not the only tech company, investing in India. I've seen a lot of really amazing investments, even in the last few months. I think there are many opportunities. So I love that you're focusing on India and public speaking, tech skills. I hope that as you're going about this, one of the things you're thinking about is that concept of, inclusivity. When I look at, the workforce in India specifically and the amount of women in the workforce, what more can we do to make sure that, women have the skills as well. So I hope that as you're going about your competition, you're really putting some extra effort into diversity and inclusion and thinking about how do you make sure that you're speaking to and with that female audience too.
Actually, we are a young company, but we made sure that we are 50-50. Our ratios
Oh,
are.
that's great. That's where you start, like looking at your team and how do you make sure that your team is both diverse and inclusive. If your team is not diverse and inclusive, it's very hard to think like your audience. You don't, as much as I'd like to say that I can think like a man, and there are probably many times when people, think that I might have stereotypical, male characteristics, but at the end of the day, I'm not. Just like, I need young people on my team to help guide me when I'm interacting with young people, even though sometimes I feel like a teenager.
So, very surprising fact I would like to share with you. The
Please.
nominations have started in the contest, and a lot of people are applying. But I'm very surprised to see the almost like 70 to 80% are women.
Is that right? That's wonderful. So it sounds like, whatever you're doing, you're doing it right. And India is such a big population. There's just so many people that you could empower and inspire.
Yeah, so the whole idea behind the award is they get creative, they think about their idea, they get the presentation skills, they improve their language, they improve their surrounding. So it's an overall speaking competition, but it's completely done using a video. So
Is it happening in English or are you using any of the local dialects?
well, I have allowed one more language, which is the national language of India,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm sure 99% would be in English.
Got it, got it, got it.
But anyway, this program is dedicated, is a spotlight for you. So I will not like to talk more about this
Oh, yeah, no worries.
because you mentioned about women empowerment. So I just wanted to inform you that, we are doing a bit, even though we are.
No, I love it. I love it. It's really good.
So the last question, Melissa, is, IBM is a very large company and you are a very senior person. You manage a lot of initiatives globally. What is that IBM and your team is going to come out with in next, few years, which will change the world?
That's a great.
Let me explain.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Let me explain where I'm coming from. Let's say you must have heard about Starlink. The
Mm-hmm.
Starlink whole concept is they want to, they don't want people to go for 5G. They will change the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then 100% human population will have access to Wi-Fi,
Mm-hmm.
broadband. and things like that. So is
Mm-hmm.
there is something that is coming out which will change the world in next 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
Especially now we are going through COVID.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things I've been really excited about, and this isn't something that sits within, kind of my team, but I've been really excited about, some of the, compute power and just some of the, I think I read an article yesterday about, the innovations that IBM is creating when it comes to quantum computing. So I think there are some very, very, if I can use this word, sexy things coming when it comes to quantum computing. I would say that's one piece. I would say when I think about, and that's kind of IBM as a whole, when I think about my team specifically, now, I think when you're talking about working with startups, you never know which one's going to be a unicorn and which one's going to be a dud, because we know that 80, 90% of startups fail. I hope that through my program, I have created something that will empower these 45 startups to really build, scale, transform the world. I look at the startups that are in our program now, and they have some really transformative and innovative ideas in healthcare, in financial services. And those are all about, if you think about how many people have access to banking, right? A bank account. How many people have access to a digital identity or an identity? How many people have access to healthcare? Different payment mechanisms for people who are at the bottom of the pyramid. These are some of the things that I'm working on. So I'm hoping that, by investing in startups and by giving them access to technology and business mentorship and credits to start to build before they have the money to pay for that technology, that is a decent investment that allows them to prosper and change the world. I think the other piece that we need to think about is that if you talk about data being the new gold and data being something that is so important, and what role will ownership of our data play in the future, and how do we protect and save our data? Now, maybe that may not seem like a change the world sexy thing, but think about if we were to, have solutions, which they exist, and they exist through IBM, how can you protect your data and make sure that it's used for a specific purpose and that it's being controlled and protected by the company in which you're sharing it with? Now, I know that when we talk about social media, a lot of us are giving our data away for free, but there's certain pieces of data that we expect protected. And so again, I don't know if that's the sexiest topic out there in terms of change the world, but it should be. And data protection, privacy, and security should be something that my grandma, if she were alive, would be talking about and demanding of her relationships with businesses. I don't think that consumer demand or that influence of consumers is quite there yet, but I'm hoping that through regulations, and I'm not saying regulations are the exactly the only answer, because it's not, but through movements like or regulations like GDPR, I think these things help to make sure we're protected. Again, not sure if that's as big as how do we give everyone broadband access, but it is a need that we all need to focus on, and it should be sexier than it is.
I think we all look forward to the IBM now because there are a lot of things that you actually hinted. A lot of great things are going to come out from these initiatives. So it was
I
really
did get to see a quantum computer, by the way, so I've seen one with my own eyes.
really
I have.
wow. So
It's
that
a it's pretty. It's a pretty thing. I was quite mesmerized just looking at it. I saw it in an IBM location in Poughkeepsie, New York.
so it is real. It's no longer in the lab. It's a product which is on the
I
shelf.
mean, I don't know about how it kind of interact. I don't know about the customer footprint, because it's not something that I manage personally. So I don't know about that, and I don't want to misspeak. And I don't know exactly all of the different research elements where it's being used. But I know it exists, and I've seen it with my own eyes, and I know where to go and who to talk to for information.
So great. I think there are a lot many things which are going to come out, starting with quantum computer. I think it's a big deal. We all know that. It was my personal pleasure and honor to be able to speak to you, bring to you to our program called Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me present you the Chief Penguin of IBM, Melissa Sassy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we'll catch up again in another session of Spotlight very soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.